Energy. It is all around us, both seen and unseen. It affects all the lives within humanity, our great planet Earth, and the entire universe. It is a conscious, cosmic matrix, an ever-evolving cycle, creating, breaking down, and recreating. This is Connected with your host, Andrea Dragonfly. Andrea tells us that energy is the foundation of our human experience, intrinsically affecting every facet of our lives, our perceptions, choices, and actions, as well as the challenges, opportunities, and people we attract. So now, please welcome the host of Connected, Andrea Dragonfly.
Hey, welcome to the show Connected. I am your host, Andrea Dragonfly. We have been looking at a series of shows that have been connecting us to cycles and karma. And so tonight's show is called The Karmic Return, and it's a little play on words because, of course, I'm returning back to the conversation of karma. And we kind of went through some different cycles as to how karma may go through these cycles and return again, right? So we're looking at the process of life, death, rebirth, also looking at, through reincarnation as we go through life, death, rebirth, just in seasonal cycles, annual cycles, cycles within our own lives. Throughout our lives, we also can bring karma with us through past lives. And so the karmic return is definitely a return to the conversation, but it's also about how karma will show up for us as we live out our lives, right? So it's like, is this a karmic connection or is this just a regular connection, right? So we're going to deep in our conversation around those, ideas of how do we know what a connection is karmic or not. However, before we fully jump in, because we were looking at last week was about independence, it was about freedom, it was a 4th of July episode for the United States in particular, but for the world, of course, we're looking at liberation and freedom. And I was talking about the hero's journey. And so I want to go ahead and just do a quick review, which may take the first, 10 minutes or so. But we're going to look at how the cycle of the hero's journey can also be a karmic cycle. And so we're going to pull that image up on the screen just to refresh your memory. And if you were not here or did not see this episode last week, it's definitely, you can find it at my website, www.andreadragonfly.com/media. And all of my episodes are there. So this will be episode 18, The Hero's Journey. And so you can refresh in your memory. And I will put this image up on the media tools. And so every time I do have an image on a show, I'll have the media tools below. Each episode link will talk about episode 19, actually episode 18, the hero's journey, and you can pull up the image that way. And I encourage you to check them out. They're powerful teaching tools, things that we can sit with on our own and reflect on and really kind of connect into and expand with, because the show is about connected, how we're connected to every part of our life experience in some way. Right? And so we're looking at how is the hero's journey connected to my life experience. And even in the very corner of this image, of course, I had taken this image off of the interwebs, but there is other stories, there's other writers, there's other very significant books even to read that also can clarify the hero's journey. It's going to show up in so many different ways. I also encourage you to go online, go to YouTube and type in the hero's journey and see what comes up. There's a lot of different information out there that's also going to be very specific, and you can also look at how do I put my life experience, my story, this very significant part of my life story into this hero's journey? Is this part of the hero's journey? And really start to look at your process through the hero's journey to recognize if you've completed it or if you're still on the journey, because sometimes we don't fully complete that. So when we're going to take a look at it right now, and with that hero's journey, usually what happens is that there is a call to go on this new adventure, and this could be anything from a new relationship. It could be to having a new career or a new job, or moving, to a new place because there's this call. Maybe you live in the city and you want to go across the nation to some other place that there's that calling for you, right? And then oftentimes there's that part where you're like, okay, I'm getting the call, but I'm not sure if this is right. I'm not sure if this is what I'm up for. And there's that nervousness that can come up, and it can come up many things. I'm going to call it nervousness, but there's a hesitation. There's maybe a possible refusal. No, I'm not ready. Oh, I can't afford it, or whatever, depending on what the situation is. And then there's this meeting of the minds. And so maybe you've been working with it in your energy field, you've been talking to people, and you're getting the support. There's some sort of support that comes and says, yeah, go for it. Do this. Depending on where you are in your life, sometimes in our youth, it's like you're young. You don't have a family yet. Go and see the world. Go and travel across the world, whatever that is. But it's the call to the adventure, and then getting the support from wherever. Could be family, could be partner, could be friends, could be even, professors in a university, college, whatever scenario. So we're looking at how this can play out in so many different ways, but we're getting that support. And then as we begin to start this journey, we begin to seek out, where am I going to go, or whatever, or where am I going to live, or we're going to seek out allies. And these allies can come from many different places. And so we're looking at that very first Act 1, the separation. We're getting ready to leave our old familiar and move into the unknown, the mystery. And so there's many ways that this shows up, and because we're all such very unique individuals, it's going to look different for every single one of us. So I'm talking very generalized here. So what happens is, like, at the very, end of Act 1, not the end of Act 1, but as we're moving into that first threshold, we're looking at the road of the trials and tests. And this is where we're beginning to figure out, okay, how's this going to go? And even if it's with a new partner, right? Like, this is the learning process with each other. This is the meeting of each other's people. Maybe it's the friends group, and maybe it's the family group, and all of that. And am I passing the tests that, allow me to be with this person in a way that's comfortable, or whatever, right? However that shows up for each person. So we're in that phase. And so then we move into that first crossing of the threshold. And this is where we're beginning to start to feel the pressures. We start to feel like, what is this all about? And we're getting these tests in these new ways. So it could, in a relationship, it can be the first conflict. It could also be, where a person goes out into the world and maybe they're looking for that job and that job isn't showing up, and they're feeling maybe slightly defeated or something. And so they're having these experiences where things aren't going necessarily the way that they thought it would go. It's kind of becoming a little bit of a stressor in a certain way. And it's through these stresses that we begin to kind of get into ourselves. This is where our wounds begin to activate about, oh, this was a bad idea. Oh, maybe this isn't the right person if I'm with this person, whatever it is. But we begin to have these doubts, these hesitations, these feelings that are coming up that said, oh, shoot, I made a bad mistake. Maybe I made a bad decision here, right? Can I go home? And we're like, okay, I'm gonna keep going. And it's through these processes that we begin to meet that part of our shadow self, This shadow self where, this is who I am when I'm upset, when I'm angry, when I'm not getting what I want. That shadow self is very much like if we were to be an animal. It's where the teeth and the talons come out. It's how we protect ourselves. And so it's not always pretty. The shadow self is definitely that part of us that necessarily, society doesn't want to see in us. That society wants us to be, happy and amenable and being able to, problem solve immediately. All those things that show like, hey, yeah, everything's good. We know how to get through the stresses without, falling into shadow. But here we fall into the shadow. Here we start to see these parts of us kind of coming out, and we begin to have to work with those parts of us. And so sometimes we have to work with these in these different ways. And sometimes people might go see a counselor, a therapist, a healer, or somebody who they will seek advice from. So they're going to find, tools. They're looking for, how do I get through these parts of myself? And then usually an ordeal comes up. And so in that ordeal, this is where we're really at the effect of ourselves. This is where we're like, oh my God. So we're really feeling kind of defeated, or we're feeling like we're getting pulled apart into just, different places where it says, this is an ordeal. This is where I'm getting dismembered. Even if it's at a new job and you're learning the ropes and you are being maybe asked to step into a position of leadership or something, and you feel like you failed miserably, and then you get, kind of like torn apart by your boss or your team or whatever. But it can also be, again, think about how that might show up for you. If a person's traveling, across the world, and maybe they're in some other country, this is where maybe their bag gets stolen and all their money gets stolen, their passport gets stolen, or something like that, right? So we're feeling these very intense experiences. And so we're moving into this place where we find, okay, here's the remedy for this at this moment. Okay, I'm learning how to work through that shadow component of myself. I'm learning how to say, okay, you know what? I got through this, learn from my mistakes here. And then this is where, so that's that first threshold. It's the first kind of coming into ourselves. And then we move into the second threshold. And the second threshold is, we know like there's no returning at this point. We can't go home, like we got it. At this point, it's like, okay, we're going to go through this. I'm doing it. I'm really going to do this. And so, of course, different life experiences are going to show up. And so this is where we actually things begin to intensify. Things begin to, like, we do find ourselves in these situations where it is like, going to the land of no return. Like we have to go through these additional challenges. And this again is part of the initiation process. So these are the initiating tests. These are the parts of life that show up, that test us, our strength, our wherewithal, our ability to move through, adversity. And so oftentimes, this is why I said, like, where are you on the journey? Many times people don't fully make it through these tests, and they don't fully get the grander lessons that's to come here. And so this is that part where we're actually, the initiate starts to go out when they hear the call and they leave for the journey. They become the initiate. And these are the initiations. This is the medicine that we learn about ourselves and how strong we are and how capable we are. And part of it is about self-realization. What do we realize about ourselves? How do we overcome the obstacles that maybe we've been carrying with us as baggage since, we were in our youth, even our early traumas, our traumas from our past lives even. And so we're carrying these through, and we come to, and then even in the ascent, so we're coming through the second threshold. We're here, you can even see it says ascent, the magic flight. Usually at this moment, somewhere when we're in the initiation process, but we've been going through it for a little bit of time, there's this they say the black moment, the death of dreams here, the dark night of the soul. We get really confronted. We get really confronted with, am I capable? Can I do this? What is this really all about? And so this is where we then cross into the third threshold. And that third threshold is that sacrifice. This is a plot point. What the illustrator of this graph is saying is that this is the moment where we have to say, what's not working about myself? What do I need to change about myself? And we get really clear that really everything has to do with ourselves. It's not that person, it's this person. You are the star of your own show. And this is you having to recognize something about yourself that needs to be sacrificed or needs to die, even. A part of you that you've been holding on, carrying with you through the tests and the trials have been, heavy weight, baggage. And it's like, I gotta let that go. It's not serving me anymore. And so we let that go. And so then we move into, the showdown, and the showdown is past the third threshold. And this is where we let that go, and we have to fully surrender into who this new part of us is going to be. And so through that, there is oftentimes this death, and that's when the death occurs. That's when that part of us says, no more. I surrender. I give this part of myself up. This is not serving me. It's never served me. It was trying to protect me, but is only inhibiting me. And I'm completely and then we just kind of have to die in that place. And then the resurrection happens. And it's through that death, and then there's that stillness. And I've talked about the seasons. This is the winter time and the reflection. And in the reflection, we learn the lessons, we upgrade, we come into this new way of understanding what it was all about, why I carried that, why I need to let it go. And once I let it go, how it's transforming me, right? So we move into this resurrection, and that's the ascension. Resurrection of springtime. The plants are coming, the trees are growing bigger. They had to go through the harsh of winter, of course, in the Northern Hemisphere particularly, to really be able to understand, the new growth and the wisdom that came with that last year of however drought, weather, tornadoes, whatever it was, right? So I'm bringing it back to nature, bringing it back to our human experience. And then through that is where we become this master of these. Here they says the two worlds, but this is the incorporation. We incorporate it into our energy field. We learn this new way. We learn the aha moment. The aha moment is like the final kind of like welcoming you in as the new fully fledged initiate. Now you're initiated. That's the initiation. So the incorporation takes time. It's not immediate. It can take a few years. And I'll talk a little bit about that when we return from break. But again, before we go to break, which is about to happen in just a minute here, we move to the last threshold, the fourth threshold. And this is where we come back into the world a completely new person, a changed person, an evolved person. We've evolved through the process, and it's stepped forward, and now we have this new insight, this new understanding and awakening that we bring to the world, and we go back to our communities. Even if we go back home to our families or our birthplace or whatever it is, but we're a changed person. And we bring the gift of who we are, but there comes a struggle with that because people only remember us of who we once were, not who we are now. So this is the process of really being able to step into that integration, step into that wisdom, because that wisdom is learned experience that we can acknowledge, understand, recognize. And then when we really understand that on that level, we move it into wisdom. So bringing that wisdom forward. And then we can live out our lives with that new wisdom. And it's very possible another hero's journey may just be on the horizon. Sometimes people get one hero's journey. Sometimes not everybody even gets a hero's journey. And some people get multiple hero's journey, depending on what they signed up for in this lifetime. So we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about just kind of wrapping up this and how it connects to karmic cycles and the karmic return and people who show up in our lives, and how this too can be very much a hero's journey. So I'll see you back here in 2 minutes.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. Rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies. Find settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Okay, welcome back. So we were just looking at the hero's journey. And again, I'm going to have that image posted on my website, which is www.andreadragonfly.com. And you can go directly to /media even, and that'll go right to where all the episodes are, all the media information, and the tools. So you can play with that, look at that. Again, invite you to go onto YouTube and do Google searches and play with, the hero's journey and see, more about where you are on the journey and, what stage you might even be. And there's all sorts of incredible stories to support this journey for us to recognize how that really works for us in whatever area, whatever part of, how the hero's journey has shown up for us. And so we're looking at this, of course, every show leads into some other energetic that they're all connected. And of course, when we start to go down these, like everything's connected and we start to, first of all, talk about karma, like I did several weeks ago, it's going to branch off into these different ways, these different conversations, right? And of course, we could go further and further down because, again, everything's connected. And it's about taking this information and bringing it into your energy field. We talked about the soul. And the soul is that part of us that's our navigation device. It brings us to the people, the places, the experiences, but it also connects us to what we deeply desire for ourselves. What is that I deeply desire for myself? When we dream, what are we dreaming of? And that lives within the soul as well. So bringing it into our soul, the soul is also the way we connect into the great energy field of allies and benevolent beings and whatnot. And of course, there's going to be a whole show on that, but I wanted to get through some of these things before we got to those conversations, because those conversations are very, intense. I don't want to say intense, but they're very filled, they're beautiful. But I feel like we need to get through some other parts of that before we can get there, right? And so we're looking again, bringing that hero's journey back into karmic cycles. And karma, again, is really about these incredible lessons. It's about energy, and energy that we actually give out returns back to us. So it's almost like the law of give and take. It's of giving and receiving. I'm sorry, it's not necessarily giving and taking, but it's like what we put out will return back to us. And so if we are giving out good energy, loving energy, kind and generous energy, then we're going to be bringing that back to us. We can call that good karma. And then we also, if we're doing the opposite of that and we're really kind of like all out for ourselves and we're perfectly fine to step on everybody's backs to find our success, to achieve what we want. We're not thinking about other people, we're only thinking about ourselves, or we're even cruel. We're even like, working within these very harsh judgments that lead, that are followed by actions of cruelty towards other people, temptations. We talked about the Ahrimanic energy of judgments, right, wrong, good or bad. I'm better than you, and I'm gonna, take you down. Those types of energies. And then also that Luciferic energy, which is about temptation. I want for me and I don't care about you. And this is also running over people's basic human rights, right? So we're looking at these energies, and then we're going to get some of that back as well. That within these lifetimes, if we have that in the one lifetime, and we're going to feel our effect in the next lifetime. So I want to bring this into relationships. And I'm going to take a quick drink of water because I feel a little, sometimes when we start talking about certain things and bring things up. So sorry about that. But thank you. And so we're looking at karmic relationships. And again, we can have karmic relationships on both sides. So for example, karmic relationships that are good relationships, these are like our allies. And so we can feel into, meeting a friend. And the friend could have been a grade school friend, it could have been a college friend, it could have been a friend in earlier part of a career. Wherever you are in your life, it's that friend where you're like, oh my gosh, we must have known each other in a past life. For some people, they'll say that, right? But other people who this is all, kind of new for, this is that moment where you notice that there's a bond that is just like, wow, I love this person. I want to be this person's best friend or whatever, right? Like there's this connection. And of course, I'm speaking as a woman, and men can also have that the bromance, right? Where they're like, oh, connected. And so these are our people. They're part of our soul family. And I will talk more about soulmates and twin flames because, there's a lot of information out there, and it's not always been, those aren't words or language that has been known throughout the ancient, wisdom and cultures. But they do connect us to these karmic friendships or these karmic allies. And so there's people in my life that I know that I've had many lifetimes with, working alongside them in service, because I'm a woman in service in this lifetime. And so these are my allies. These are the people that are supporting me. And I'm supporting them, and we're having these relationships. And it could be whatever that is, so these are our allies that support us and are there for us no matter what. And we could certainly have conflict with them a little bit, but we know in that conflict that no matter what, we're always going to be connected, right? Like there's that, no conflict could ever pull us apart. So those are some of our allies. And then we have karmic family relationships. And I was going to say this at the beginning of the commercial. At the beginning after the commercial, is that I'm going to touch on some of these, and this conversation is going to be a much lengthier conversation. So karmic relationships is probably going to be what we're talking about for the next 4 shows, because I'm going to focus on different things and how these show up, because there's karmic family and there's karmic ancestral lineage. And so that might even be 2 shows, one specifically on your family and one specifically on the lineage of your of your ancestors, of your grandparents and your cousins and aunts and uncles even, and how certain karma will come down through the generations and give us these very challenging experiences. So we do have karma in our families, and sometimes we can have really good karmic relationships with some of our family members, and sometimes we can have really challenging karmic relationships with our family members, right? And then we have people who have done us, who have been a perpetrator in some way, who have kind of done us wrong, who have, they're the bullies. They could be a perpetrator. They could be a physical, a sexual perpetrator. They could show up in many different ways, but they could be the arch nemesis. They could be the person in high school or a person in the work environment that there's this really intense kind of, um, conflict energy around. And so, or it could just be somebody who's hurt you and that had hurt you over time. And so there's also, there could be a karmic connection to that. And then we have, so that's its own conversation, and that will be its own show even, because we're going to dive into that on a different level. And then we have people who can show up as our karmic partners. And sometimes these karmic partners could become our life partner, and we marry them and we have the rest of our life with them. And sometimes these karmic partners can show up for just a part of time, and there's this beautiful poem. It's an unknown author, but it's the poem about how people show up for us, for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And I'm also going to post that poem for episode 19 as part of the media tools for you to read it and for you to connect into the people of your life. Because what I'm going to say here is that karmic relationships are powerful relationships. This is what makes them different than a regular person that comes into your life. Like even, sometimes even our best friend. So sometimes our best friend can be a new person that we never had a karmic relationship with in a past life. We could just make a new, wonderful, beautiful friend. But that relationship with karma is, there's almost like the soul. I was just talking about the soul. There's a soul knowing. It activates the soul. There's that vibration. There is an energy that emits through that says, oh, there's something here, whether it's for like in a positive relationship or also a challenging relationship that's very difficult. And so how we know a karmic relationship is karmic is that oftentimes, now I'm going to split this into two. So if it's a karmic positive relationship, like an ally, like somebody who shows up for you, there's that feeling that you can feel it almost in your bones. You feel it in the cellular makeup of your body, if you've ever felt that before, right? There's just this almost inner knowing. It's an inner knowing that said, yes, we've definitely have had, lifetimes together. We've definitely been connected before. And so there's a feeling of relief. There's a feeling of being seen and known by this person in a way that maybe other people haven't seen and known you. And there's also just this, this recognition within the energy field. There's like this, I'm going to say again, like there's this vibration that says, this isn't our first time. We, because there's a lot of similarity. There's a lot of, support and acknowledgement. And that's why I say to be seen and known, is because you guys had lifetimes before that you have similar things that you've gone through that you both can feel very in alignment with. So it's an alignment piece. Now, again, not every person we meet is a karmic relationship. And also it depends on how social you are. If you're a very social person, then you're going to meet a lot of different people, and not every one of those people are karmic. But if you're not a very social person, if you tend to stay away from crowds and you like to have your little knit community of your people, oftentimes some of those people could very well be karmic for you. Because really what we're here to grow. We're here to learn and grow. And when we haven't fully learned and grown from our last experiences, they do carry over. And those allies are there to help support us grow with those challenging situations. They're there to help walk us through even in a certain way. Okay. So I'm going to move away from the allies, the karmic allies, and now I want to go into those people who are here to help us grow. And again, I'm going to specifically talk about personal relationships. We're going to talk about family, and we're going to talk about perpetrators and violators in a different karmic relationship episode. So when we're moving into our personal relationships, first of all, we have another commercial coming up here, so I think this is a perfect segue. So we're gonna take this commercial, but what we're also gonna do is when we get back, remember this is a live show, and if you have questions, by all means, you are welcome to call in. You're welcome to text him if you're on Facebook. And you're also welcome at any point, because this is going to be several series, like several episodes talking about karma. You're also welcome to go to my website and you can contact me there. Again, www.andreadragonfly.com in the contacts section. You can also bring it to social media. There's the Dragonfly Instagram and Facebook connected site at, connected at Dragonfly. So all of those are places that you can also bring your questions, so that if you want me to talk about it specifically in the next episode, I can certainly do that. So we are going to take a quick break, another 2 minutes, and I'll be back and we'll dive into personal relationships.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Okay, welcome back. Okay, diving into our karmic relationships with a significant partner. Now, these oftentimes can be a bit messy. And even in the way in how they come together can even be a little bit messy. And I will say that this episode will probably kind of flow over until next week. So I'm going to talk about as much as I can talk about, for tonight. And then, of course, carry it forward, because there's so much. There's so much. And of course, I got 20 minutes to tell you about it. So we're going to possibly take our time as we go through all of this. So karmic relationships, they're, again, as I said, they're really about learning about ourselves, learning about how to overcome certain areas of disempowerment. And these karmic partners come in because they're actually there in a couple of different ways. They're in there oftentimes to mirror something. And so that mirroring is part of what had happened in a last lifetime. But you're in a new life. And so the situation, the circumstance, everything's going to be different. Because, I mean, let's say a past life was 100 years ago. We didn't have all the technology that we have today. Things are going to be different. We don't have the cities in the same way. Everything culturally is different. And it doesn't necessarily even mean that you were in the culture that you currently were born in, this one, whatever that is for you. So we have to recognize that these are themes. These are energy themes. And as an energy healer, I work with karma. It's probably my number one kind of energy in which I do all my energy work, because we're carrying these karmic patterns forward and we get stuck in them and they become very disempowering. And there are many people who have karmic relationships where this pattern is kind of like constantly, I want to call looping, where it's like, you need to do something different. And you try to do these different things, but in some way, it still feels disempowering, right? You're still not feeling like how you really wanted it to be. Now, I feel like I'm jumping ahead, so I'm going to go back to the beginning of a karmic relationship. Usually when we meet somebody, there is this incredible draw to them. This, like, and again, how I talked about our allies, like how there's this energy cord that's connected in the soul that says, hey, there's something here. There's something here. And some people may not know, of course, at that moment what it is. But it's like, ooh, maybe you think that person is very attractive. Maybe you think that person is, has, this information, their career that you find incredibly intriguing. It's the magnetism. And this is the imprints and how our soul brings us to the people in which we are to meet. This is that energy magnetism that I talked about in a previous show. So it's that magnetism that becomes awakened within our energy field. And we recognize, oh, there's something here. And sometimes, and of course, I'm talking general, there's so many different scenarios for everybody, right? But sometimes we might just even feel like our intuition is going to come up and say, oh, there's something here, right? And these relationships, when I say can be messy even in how they first arrive, sometimes a person could already be in a relationship when they meet this person, which has difficulty and challenge and the adversity already present, right? It's like, oh, there's something here. And so sometimes, and again, there's innumerable things that happen, but oftentimes what is kind of sort of, what's the word, consistent in certain ways is that sometimes people might have an affair in some way because it was such a strong connection and they thought it would never happen again. There's also a breakup of the relationship that says, honorably, before the affair happens or anything like that, where it's like, I'm sorry, but I have to check this out. Like, I don't know that. And sometimes these relationships can come during relationships that are, have been married for years and have families even, and where it's absolutely some of the hardest types of energetics that a person has to go through. So these are some of the ways in how these relationships show up. That's not always that way either. These are the very difficult ones. But it's also, the reason why I say this is because in our human experience, these things can be devastating. They can have absolute devastating effects in the relationships, which can also create karma in another way with those people, the people that we're in that relationship with. So it's got some, it's got this multi-layer energies to it. Now, it's also possible that there isn't additional accrued karma in the breakup of the relationship. And it's also completely possible that there is no relationship and there's no breakup, right? Because we have to look at all the possible ways that people come together. And sometimes a person could even come together. Let's say they take a cruise and they're on a cruise ship and they're only there for 5 days, right? And they meet this person on the cruise and it's a long distance relationship. And one person lives here and maybe the other person lives, if I'm talking about the United States, on the other side of the nation. But if we can also talk about maybe you are, coming from two different countries and one person lives in North America and another person lives in Europe or Australia or Africa or South America, wherever. But you have that really powerful draw into one another. That's like, oh, wow. And then we can look at this as the hero's journey even. We can look at it where you have the call, and I'll talk about the hero's journey kind of throughout as I talk about this. You have that call to be like, oh, there's this energy tie or connection or vibration or something. I don't know what it is, but oh, I probably shouldn't do it. Oh, I don't want to do it. Oh, it's inconvenient. They're not convenient, right? They're never really convenient. Let's just call it out. And then there's this like communication with some of these other people that said, oh my God, I have this connection with somebody and I don't necessarily know how, what do I do about it? And of course, whatever that person's life scenario is, they could have just gotten a really amazing job, over here. And then this connection comes and all they want to do is move to, wherever that person is to explore that and see what that is. So this is the call. This is the beginning of coming into those karmic relationships. And it doesn't necessarily mean that every relationship isn't going to be easy. Here's the thing. No relationship's easy, no matter what. So, yeah, any relationship is going to have its challenges, no matter what, right? So then within even looking at the hero's journey and looking at how, the quest begins is that you're sitting in this place. Do I want to go for this? Do I not want to go for this? And then there's the yes, I'm going to go for it, right? And that becomes the trials, those tests right before you hit that first threshold. And in that first threshold, this is really about the tests. This is about how is this going to work? And especially if you're already in a relationship and, this is part of the spiritual journey. Nobody wants, of course, there are some people who want to hurt other people, but nobody ever wants to really hurt the people that they love, ever. And that's why they lie, and that's why they do all sorts of different things, and there's all sorts of secrets and all that kind of stuff. But there's this incredible energetic force that is pulling at them. And so I just really want to speak to that because that's the karma. In karma, and I'm gonna take my time talking about this. I'm not gonna try to rush. I often try to rush these shows because I only have so much time, but I know that this is going to carry over even until next week. So, so with that, we are looking at how, relationships they're never easy, that there's this force. And I don't know a whole lot about karma within the Hindu tradition, which is how most people know it, right? I haven't really studied that. I know some, and I've certainly looked it up and I've read on it and all that kind of stuff, but it's not really exactly what I'm sharing with you. I'm sharing kind of more of a Western esoteric, more of a kind of an understanding of how karma through my background, my teachings have shown up. But what I do know is that even like in Hinduism, there is a god associated with the karma, the Lord of Karma, and that god is known as Shani Dev. And I was just doing some research and looking it up and whatnot. And so some belief systems, and I don't know exactly because I'm saying I don't know this. So this, you might know more about this than I do, but they might attribute it to a God force. This is a force that comes through some sort of God energy. Now, even in the Western esoteric, there's also this connection to the Christos, Christ energy, that it's connected to the karma. And if we wanted to work our karma out, we work with the Christ energy. And I'm not talking about the Jesus energy, because Jesus was the ascended master, and Christ is the higher energetic consciousness that came into the Jesus, the Yeshua, the Jesus ascended master, who and we'll talk about that another time too. However, but really, karma is what we've created on our own. So it's not really connected to these energetics. They're not in charge of if we get karma and how we get it. We're in charge of how we get the karma. Now, again, I'm talking about a force. It's a force kind of like planetary forces, kind of like the force of nature, right? It's a force that is undeniable and unignorable and something that is just working you because you're being presented with an opportunity. And of course, when we start to go into these relationships, we have no idea what that opportunity even is. We have no idea what's coming down the pike. We have no idea how this is going to go. And of course, I mean, I'm a dreamer. I'm fully romantic, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be awesome. This is the relationship I've been looking for. This is how it's going to go. I've been dreaming about this person since, I was 5 or whatever, you know what I mean? And then you get into the relationship and you're like, what? This isn't what I signed up for. This is not it. So this is where we get into that first threshold. We get into that place where we're like, what's happening here, right? And of course, take your own experience and look at, how possibly this might be showing up or had shown up, or, for you. How does this show up for you? But again, these are things that we are here to clean up. These are things that we are here to actually take what was once a disempowering relationship and learn through these trials of the hero's journey. I'm using this cycle. I'm using this graph. I'm using, the journey as what this is all about. This is the connection, right? This is how we're connected. And so within that, we're really probably just going to stay right around here at the first threshold for today's show, because I'm going to invite you, when we get back from our last commercial, to really connect into that part of yourself, connecting into this. And again, I just want to reiterate, I want to state again that these relationships, we can leave these relationships after we come through the whole cycle and be like, okay, I learned some incredible things. And we can clear our karma. I mean, that's really what it's all about. Clearing that karma. And then we can also go through the cycle and get stuck in it. And we're going to talk about that a little bit when I get back from this commercial break. But we're really going to actually bring that into probably more of next week's conversation. But again, coming into this first threshold and coming into this launching off into this relationship, because this is in some way what you came in for. This is part of your process of this lifetime. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, come back, talk a little bit more about that, and then we're going to do a little connection into ourselves around that. So I'll see you back here in just 2.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness. Unlock your full potential with limitless growth. Published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them. Rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies. Find settings that allow them to be the most productive and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense Radio Show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation.
Okay, welcome back. So we are definitely at the last bits of our show here, or the connected show here. And so we are going to definitely look at crossing into that first threshold next week. And with the time that we have left, I just want to kind of go back into what we were just talking about, and about how these karmic relationships sometimes can show up very inconveniently, right? And how there is this process that, each and every one of us is going to respond or react to it differently. And I'm just going to clarify response and react. React is unconscious. We're going to be reacting unconsciously, thinking about whatever comes out, right? Without taking a moment to sit with it and be with it. And then that response, again, is that being conscious. So the difference between reaction is unconscious and responding is conscious. And so this is where that person comes in and we start to really kind of connect into that energy. And some people can immediately react without thinking about it, because there's a lot of unconscious people in humanity. And there's even times I think that maybe even back in my, throughout my life, that certainly has shown up. And then there's times that we will be very thoughtful and be like, this really is something, and I need to sit and try to figure this out. But we're never really going to figure it out. It's the journey. It's the mystery. It's the unknown. It's why we come in and have amnesia, spiritual amnesia, every time we're reincarnated for the most part. And some children actually remember things from their past lives, but for the most part, we have spiritual amnesia because we're here to connect energetically with it all in different ways, evolve, grow. So with this time that we have left, I'm going to invite you to go ahead and close your eyes. Close your eyes and take a couple of deep breaths, just kind of recalibrating your energy field, bringing it into a peaceful place. Bringing your awareness into your heart space. And I want you to tap in to your first memory of a possible karmic relationship. Who was this person? We all have these potentially different karmic relationships. And so even looking at the first one, and maybe you've only had one that you can identify, but I invite you to sink in to see, where are you? Even just from the review of the hero's journey at the very beginning of the show, where might you feel yourself at this very moment with that person? Is there still an energy cord, an energy vibration that vibrates, that keeps you in this knowing of that person? Feeling like maybe there wasn't completion with that person. Or feel in to feel, do you have completion with that person? If you feel that you've completed the cycle and you've cleared the karma by receiving an incredible lesson, but I'm inviting you to reflect on that process for you. If you recognized that you met a karmic person and it was a fleeting moment, but it wasn't possible, or you weren't fully able to come into that relationship, or maybe you're harboring still resentment, pain, unsettled, a wounded heart, I invite you to see where maybe you were on the hero's journey, where things ended. And by all means, this happens throughout our lives. And so if you haven't completed your hero's journey with that karmic partner, don't worry. There's time. And it doesn't have to be in this lifetime when I say there's time. When we complete the karmic journey, we find freedom. A freedom steeped in love, compassion, forgiveness, and the depth of gratitude. We want the very best for them when we complete that journey. If we haven't completed the journey, we can't feel that yet. That's part of the cycle that we'll be talking about next week. So with this time, I invite you to just allow that to fill your energy field, fill your consciousness. Let it expand you. Let yourself feel into this. Let go. Bring it into your week, and I invite you to join me next week to finish this part of the conversation. So take a breath or two of release. And bring your attention back through your heart space into the present moment. And I want to invite you, if you are finding value in these shows and this information, and again, this information is just to add to what you already know, to expand you. So many different people will talk about it in so many different ways. So allowing it to just expand you. I invite you to share it with a friend. I invite you to pass it forward to somebody who might also benefit from these conversations. And I know I call them conversations. I'm talking to you with hopefully any questions you have for me. But in the meantime, if you do like this, you can certainly subscribe to me on this channel. You can push the like as well. And that way it'll be easier for you to find me for next week. And then at some point, I'll move it over to my own YouTube station, my own YouTube channel, because I do know that people are having a hard time finding me. And that's why I'm inviting you to share this with others. Other than that, you can find every episode at my website, www.andreadragonfly.com/media. And you can also reach out to me directly at the website, or you can reach out to me on Facebook and Instagram at connected.dragonfly. And I wish you a beautiful week ahead and stay connected. Explore your connections. And with that, I'll see you next week.
This has been Connected with your host, Andrea Dragonfly. Join Andrea each week on an extraordinary journey, exploring the consciousness of energy and how you are connected. Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.